It's 2 in the morning, and you're lying in the dark with your phone face down. Your body is exhausted, but your brain didn't get the memo. It's still running. It's replaying that thing you said at dinner, the one nobody else even noticed. It's rehearsing tomorrow's meeting, constructing worst-case scenarios you'll almost certainly never face. You flip the pillow to the cold side, press your eyes shut, and try to think about nothing. You count backwards from 100, and somewhere around 73, the loop kicks back in. Because trying to think about nothing is still thinking, and deep down, you already know that. The harder you chase silence, the louder the noise gets, and now you're frustrated about being frustrated. You can hear the hum of the refrigerator through the wall, and even that tiny sound feels deafening. Most people assume this kind of late-night spiral is a discipline problem. Just try harder to relax. They tell themselves to breathe, to let it go, to stop making everything such a big deal. But it's not a willpower failure. It's a pattern your nervous system never learned to interrupt. And the reason everything feels louder and more urgent at 2 a.m. has nothing to do with weakness. If this sounds painfully familiar, you're not broken, and you're far from alone in it tonight. In this video, you'll learn 3 cognitive behavioral therapy tools that can interrupt that loop tonight. These aren't vague tips like just breathe or think positive. They're actual clinical techniques. Therapists use these with real clients in real offices, and they work outside those walls just as well. And the last tool is so deceptively simple that most people dismiss it before they even try it. But it's the one that rewires the pattern at its root, not just the symptoms on the surface. You're lying in bed, and a thought arrives like an uninvited guest who lets themselves in. I'm going to embarrass myself tomorrow, and everyone in that room will see right through me. So you do what feels logical. You try to argue with it, disprove it, wrestle it into silence. You remind yourself you've done dozens of presentations and that most of them went perfectly fine. You pull up evidence, the compliment your manager gave, the slides you nailed back in March. But the thought doesn't care about evidence, because every time you engage, you're feeding it attention. And attention is the only currency a 2 a.m. thought needs to stay alive and grow stronger. It's not because you're weak-willed. It's because you're using the wrong tool for this job. Arguing with a late-night thought is like trying to put out a grease fire by throwing water on it. The water feels right, but it makes the fire spread. And now, the mess is bigger than before. Here's what cognitive behavioral therapists actually teach instead. Label the thought without engaging it. Instead of, I'm going to fail, you say, I notice I'm having the thought that I might fail. That tiny shift from being inside the thought to observing it creates what's called cognitive distance. You're no longer fused with the story your brain is generating alone in the dark at 2 a.m. You're watching it from one step back, like reading subtitles on someone else's anxious inner monologue. The thought is still present, but it's lost its authority. It's a sentence now, not a sentencing. This works partly because of what's happening inside your brain's default mode network at night. When external stimulation drops, lights out, silence, nothing competing for attention, the DMN activates. It's the neural network responsible for self-referential thinking, mental time travel, and social replay. At 2 a.m., with no tasks competing for bandwidth, the DMN essentially has the stage to itself. It runs simulations, replays social interactions, and imagines futures that haven't happened yet. Labeling the thought doesn't silence the network. Nothing short of sleep or focused attention can do that. But it recruits your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for perspective taking and executive control. You're not trying to stop the thought. And that's the part most people get wrong about this. You're changing your relationship to it. And that shift is what actually breaks the loop over time. But here's the problem with labeling one thought at a time. At 2 a.m., they travel in packs. There's always another thought behind the first, already forming before you finish naming the current one. And that's where the second tool becomes essential. It handles the entire queue, not just the front. Picture this. You've been in bed for 40 minutes, and your brain has built an invisible spreadsheet. Tomorrow's deadline sits in column A, next week's appointment in column B, the unpaid bill in C. Each item doesn't sit quietly. It spawns 3 sub-worries and a contingency plan you'll never use. You feel like you need to solve every one right now, or you'll forget and everything will unravel. Stay with me on this one. It's the tool most people resist first and the one that works fastest. It's called worry postponement, and it sounds almost absurdly simple when you first hear it explained. Instead of trying not to worry, you do something counterintuitive. You schedule your worrying deliberately. You pick a 15-minute window during the day, maybe 6 p.m., and make it your official worry time. When a worry surfaces at 2 a.m., you jot it down in the notebook beside your bed. Then you tell yourself, clearly and specifically, I'll give this my full attention at 6 tomorrow. You're not dismissing the worry or pretending it doesn't matter. You're assigning it a reserved time slot. The psychology behind this is grounded in a concept called stimulus control, and it's well established. Over months and years, your brain has learned to associate your bed with problem solving, not rest. Every night you spend wrestling with logistics in the dark reinforces that exact neural pathway even further. Worry postponement breaks the cycle by teaching your brain that bed is not the workshop for these problems. It's not because the worries aren't valid. It's because your brain processes them poorly at 2 a.m. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that actually solves problems rationally, functions poorly when fatigued. You're running complex software on a device with 3% battery and no charger plugged in. The worries feel urgent and true, but that urgency is manufactured by exhaustion, not by actual danger. Writing the worry down is the most important step, and the one most people skip because it feels basic. That act of putting pen to paper tells your brain the thought has been captured and won't be lost. It reduces the cognitive load your working memory has been desperately trying to carry all by itself. Your mind can finally release the item, not because it stopped caring, but because the notebook will remember. And here's what surprises most people when they actually commit to this technique for the first time. When 6 p.m. rolls around and you open the notebook, half those catastrophic worries look almost silly. Not because they were stupid, but because your rested prefrontal cortex can finally see their actual size. Daylight doesn't change the problem, but it changes the brain trying to solve it. And that changes everything. The more consistently you keep the appointment, the faster your brain learns to trust the process. After a week or two, the 2 a.m. worries start losing their urgency. Your nervous system learns the routine. So now you have 2 tools: labeling to step back from individual thoughts, and scheduling to clear the queue. But there's a category of 2 a.m. thought that neither of these was designed to reach on its own. It's not about tasks or rehearsals. It's the thought that feels like a verdict about who you are. Those first 2 tools handle the mechanics of the overthinking loop, the repetition, the urgency, the pileup. But underneath that noise, there's a quieter layer most people never reach because the surface is so loud. It's the thought that isn't about tomorrow's meeting or next month's rent or any problem you can name. It whispers something about you, your worth, your competence, your place in other people's lives. And that kind of thought doesn't respond to labeling or scheduling because it doesn't feel like a thought. It feels like the truth, and that's what makes this third tool the most difficult and the most important. It's 2:17 a.m., and your friend still hasn't responded to the message you sent 8 hours ago. Your brain has already written the full story. They're upset, they're pulling away, you said something wrong. You scroll back through the conversation, analyzing every word choice, looking for the moment you ruined it. The evidence feels overwhelming. The silence, the delay, the way their last reply felt shorter than usual. But here's what your brain conveniently leaves out of that narrative. Every single time, without fail. It's not because you have evidence they're upset, it's because your brain treats missing evidence as proof. At 2 a.m., your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, runs with almost no prefrontal oversight. Your emotional brain generates verdicts, and the part meant to challenge those verdicts is too tired to show up. This is where therapists introduce what's sometimes called the courtroom technique, and it changes everything. You take that thought, my friend is angry at me, and you put it on trial. First, what is the concrete, observable evidence that actually supports this specific thought right now. They haven't responded. That's one piece, and honestly, it's circumstantial at best when you examine it. Then, what is the evidence against this thought? Even the parts your brain doesn't want to consider. They were busy last week. They responded warmly 2 days ago. They've gone quiet before with no reason. You might write both columns down. Evidence for, evidence against, in the notebook beside your bed. Seeing two lists side by side in your own handwriting changes something that staying inside your head never does. Already, the picture looks different when both sides are visible on the same page in front of you. Then you ask the question that disarms the entire case. What would you tell a friend thinking this? You already know the answer. You've been that calm, rational friend for other people dozens of times. You'd say, they're probably just busy, and you're reading into silence because you're completely exhausted. The courtroom technique works because it pulls your prefrontal cortex back online, even when it's tired. It doesn't ask you to feel different, just to evaluate evidence like a fair judge, not a panic defendant. And the reason this tool changes the pattern at its root goes deeper than any single worry session. The worry about the text was never about the text. It was about a belief that you're not enough, that you need to earn closeness, that silence means rejection, that people are always one mistake away from leaving. Every time you put that belief on trial and find the evidence lacking, you weaken its grip on you. Not instantly, not dramatically, but like water wearing down stone, slowly, persistently, and permanently. Here's what nobody tells you about being someone who lies awake overthinking at 2 in the morning. The same wiring that keeps you up is what makes you perceptive, empathetic, and deeply aware of others. You don't overthink because something is broken. You overthink because you process the world deeply. These 3 tools aren't about shutting that system down, because that system is also your greatest strength. They're about giving it a schedule, a structure, and a fair judge. Work time versus rest time. The goal was never to become someone who doesn't think deeply. That would mean losing your best quality. The goal is to stop that depth from turning against you at the hour when you're least equipped for it. You deserve to think deeply during the day and sleep soundly through the night. Both are possible. And the fact that you watched this far tells me you're already closer to that balance than you think. Think of your mind at 2 a.m. like a radio stuck between 2 stations, picking up nothing but static. The signal is still there. Clarity, calm, rest. But the dial has drifted just slightly off frequency. These tools aren't about smashing the radio or ripping the batteries out in frustration at 3 in the morning. They're about reaching for the dial and turning it, gently, deliberately, one small adjustment at a time. So the next time you're lying awake at 2 a.m., phone face down, pillow flipped to the cold side, remember that your brain isn't broken. This loop isn't permanent, and you have the tools to interrupt it tonight. If this gave you something you can actually use when the lights go out tonight, subscribe for what's next. And tell me in the comments, which are you trying tonight? The worry schedule or the courtroom technique? I'll be reading every response, and I'm curious which one clicks for you first.